So on behalf of the Spiritualists National Union, I would like to welcome you this morning to this Treasurers Training Session. My name is Minister David Bruton. I'm President of the Spiritualists National Union. Those of you who know me will know that I spent over 18 years as a church treasurer during my earlier days within the union. I've also been a district treasurer for the West Midlands district, and in 2000 I was brought onto the NEC as an ordinary member to shadow the then treasurer of the union with a view to me taking up that role when the treasurer at the time, who was Minister Dorothy Hudson, retired. I spent 3, 4, 5, 6 years maybe as the treasurer and then financial director of the SNU before in 2010 I moved up to the position of treasurer. The whole ethos of today is about support and help, and the idea came originally from Danny Goodchild, Danny, who is the finance director of the Spiritualist National Union. Danny also has been, I know, a church treasurer, churches within the Manchester district, and also he's currently the financial director of the Spiritualists National Union. So we welcome you, Danny, and thank you for having this idea, which I'm sure is going to benefit many, many people.
Good morning. Can I just say it was Leslie's idea as well?
Okay, fine, Danny, thank you. So our third participant on our meeting this morning is again a lady that I'm sure many of you will know, even if you've only spoken to her via the telephone, and that is Leslie Gilby, who is the finance manager of the SNU Trust. So we welcome you, Leslie, and thank you for the work that you've done to facilitate this meeting today. Thank you very much. Okay, so just by way of a little bit of introduction to the session, undoubtedly the treasurer, the role of the treasurer in our churches is a key role. Some will say more than likely the treasurer, it's the most important role, but that's a debate maybe we can have outside this meeting. But it is a key role because we are aware that the constitution of our churches, which is rules for churches, which I'm sure you're all very familiar with, vests the control of the church into the hands of the members of the church. Ultimately, they control and direct the way the church will be run. Obviously, if you've got a membership of 12 or 112, all of those people cannot take part in operating the church on a day-to-day basis. So what they do through the constitution is they elect a committee that is responsible, and one of the people that they will elect to fulfill that responsibility is the treasurer. And it's the treasurer's role that we are really going to focus upon today. So just thinking very quickly about the treasurer's role, obviously handling the money, collections, etc., counting them, checking them, banking them, and all of that side of things, which is not really what we're going to focus on today, but that is the day-to-day basics of the treasurer's job. And once they've counted the money and banked the money, then of course they have a responsibility to report to various people the financial state and condition, if you like, of the church. Now, it is a basic fundamental law of economics, whether you are managing your personal finances, your household finances, your church finances, a company or business finance, or even, believe it or not, the finances of the country. That if your expenditure exceeds your income, that situation cannot be sustained long term. So it is part of the job and the responsibility of the treasurer to be able to report to various people and bodies the results and the financial viability of the church. Obviously, the first line of reporting is to the church committee. And at each church committee meeting, the treasurer should be providing a report, an up-to-date snapshot of the finances of the church. Effectively, have we got enough money to pay our bills? Is the money that we are earning through our core operation, which is the operation of the church, covering all of the expenses and the upkeep of the building? They also have a responsibility to report that information to the membership. And this is really the focus of today's meeting. And that, as you are well aware, will happen annually at the annual general meeting, where a set of accounts will be presented to the members, and it is up to the members to agree those accounts or not. But then there's a little bit more. So once the annual general meeting has been held and hopefully the members have agreed the accounts, then of course those accounts have to be submitted to the union as part of your church returns. And also, more the case nowadays than perhaps was so in the past, those accounts will also have to be submitted to the Charity Commission if your church is a registered charity. So you can see, I hope, how important the presentation of those accounts is. And the importance of that is to establish the financial viability and position of the church. From the union's point of view, when we present our accounts and they are audited by our professional auditors, tests are taken by the audit team to ensure that we are viable and we have sufficient funds to continue. And even though the tests are less rigorous at church level, obviously they are equally as important, because if the church doesn't have enough money to last beyond the next 3 months, then it brings into question the viability and the future of the church. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is a little bit of an outline of what we are here for today. There will be ample opportunity for you to ask questions. Leslie is going to give a short presentation, and can I ask that you hold your questions until after she has finished the presentation, and then there will literally be the opportunity for you to ask Danny, Leslie and myself any questions arising from the presentation. Can I also note to you, there is no need for you to take copious notes during the training session, because all of the PowerPoint that Leslie has produced to support her presentation this morning is available online and downloadable from the SNU website. And obviously within a few days, this training session will also go online. So if there was some point that you feel you missed, you'll have the opportunity to go back and to check that there. And of course, the union, I can't say this enough, I know sometimes the message falls on deaf ears, but the union is here to help and support you, our churches, so that Leslie, Danny, myself, Rachel and her team in head office, if you have any questions that you arise from today's meeting, then please contact us and we will do our utmost to be able to answer them. So without further ado, I'm going to shut up and I'm going to hand over to Leslie, who is going to present for you today the presentation about how to formulate the accounts for SNU spiritualist churches. Over to you, Leslie.
Thank you very much. I'm going to share my screen in a moment and put slides up, and I think from your end you'll just see me in a little box in the corner so you can actually look at what I'm talking about. Just a few points I just want to make. As David's already said, all this information is available to download from the website, including some additional notes that you won't see on the screen today. So I'd much rather you sort of focus on what it is that I'm trying to explain to you, and that, along with the notes that you can download later, hopefully will all come together to improve your understanding. I appreciate that you're all volunteers, you are not trained accountants, and I'm going to try and make this as straightforward and as simple as possible for you. I've kept terminology to an absolute minimum, but at the end of the slides, the items that I do need to refer to by name do have little explanations as to what they are. So if at the end of it all you can't quite remember what something was, at the end of the slide there is a glossary of all the information. As David had said, we'll take all the questions at the end, and one of the main reasons for that, rather than stopping and starting, is also that I may say something earlier in the presentation that will become clearer as we go on. So it may be that if we can give you the whole view of what we're trying to achieve, by the end of it, hopefully it will make sense. If it makes sense now and then you walk away and it doesn't later, that's fine, because that's why it's going on the website, so you can go back around and have another look at it. There's a few things that we won't cover today, as we are trying to concentrate on the numbers, so we don't want to get sidetracked. Charities Commission, David's already mentioned about registration and requirements. Head office can help you with those matters, so we're not going to go down that rabbit hole at all. Gift aid, again, it will be touched on, but how we get into gift aid, that's a conversation for another day. The other thing that I have not put into these examples that I'm going to show you is any church that has an SNU Trust loan. The reason I've done that is it adds a layer of complication that probably most of you online don't need to be concerned about. So anybody that has an SNU Trust loan that would like some help in putting those transactions into the accounts, get in touch with us separately, and we'll be more than happy to show you how to slot those in. Okay. Forgive me if I explain things that are painfully obvious to everybody, but I want to be sure that everybody online is comfortable with what I'm talking about. Okay. So I'm just going to share my screen now, and this is actually what is available from the website. So hopefully you can all see my screen now. If David could give me the thumbs up.
Yes, that's fine.
Perfect. Okay. So, first issue. There we go. Okay. Now, this is the place where most of you are comfortable. Okay, the income and expenditure, because when we look back through church accounts, this is the area that most churches are reasonably happy with what they're doing. Okay. What you have here, if you can see my cursor on the screen, which I think you can, we have the different categories, and these are actually based on the format provided by the union. I know it looks slightly different to the version that you get sent out to you each year. It's just because I put it on a spreadsheet so they all lined up and put the grid lines in to make it easier for you to follow the numbers. Okay. There are a couple of changes that a couple of you may have spotted that will be on the new version that gets sent out later in the year. In the old version, you just were asked to complete your current year. What we're going to be asking you to do now is to put your previous year in as well. Putting comparable numbers in for your previous year are really helpful. But first of all, it gives you transparency for your members, and transparency is really important, as all of you, I'm sure, appreciate when it comes to finances and numbers. It helps you identify where changes have been over the year. And for the example of for the rest of this meeting, can we pretend that we're not in the middle of a global pandemic? We are working on the theory that things have returned to normal, because otherwise the explanations aren't going to make much sense. Identifying where things have changed over the year helps you in the situation that David mentioned about making sure that your income covers your expenditure. If you suddenly find that that isn't happening, or things are just getting a little bit tighter, if you're actually comparing year to year, it gives you a good indicator of what areas of your activities have either decreased or what areas of your expenditure have increased. Okay. It's also a good idea so that you can see in the expenditure side of things what you're spending your money on. Now, in this example, when I put this together, these are just numbers that I've made up. They do not relate to any church, I promise you. Under the committee expenses, you can see in 2019, there is £400 in committee expenses, but in 2020, there's only £15. Now, in this example, what we have done is, instead of the treasurer putting everything that a committee member may claim through as committee expenses, which isn't wrong. But what it does is it lumps together an awful lot of transactions that you might want to break down and give you more oversight as to what you're spending. So in 2020, what we've done is we've put it in stationery, prints and adverts, because that is what the committee member has been paying out on your behalf. So rather than putting the reimbursement to them through as committee expenses, actually categorise it in what it was they spent the funds on for you. So in this example, your committee expenses have dropped significantly, but your stationery, print and your advert has gone up. So think about how you categorise things and whether it's giving you the detail that you want to be able to see exactly where your money's going. Because when things are tight, and they definitely are this year, it's useful for you to be able to see exactly what you're spending the money on, okay? If you do it like that, you're probably left with very little in committee expenses, because most of committee expenses are paying out to buy raffle prizes or to, like say, stationery, print, putting things in the post, that kind of thing. So you actually do end up with very little in committee expenses, okay? You do need a consistent approach when you're putting things in your accounts. However, if you do make a decision to change how you're going to approach something like your committee expenses, don't change it halfway through the year. Stick with whatever system you've got so you get to the end of the year and then change it the following year. But be mindful that because when you compare things, they are going to look different. Just make sure your committee and your church members, when you get to the AGM, understand that you've approached things slightly differently for the purpose of giving yourself more transparency as to exactly where your funds are going. There's nothing wrong with doing that. Okay. The income and expenditure, like I say, I think most people find very straightforward. What I would mention to you is your paper trail. Now, I don't intend to go into it today, as David's already said, about the paper trail that you need to keep for your audit purposes and things like that. You receive books, counting cash with 2 people present, all that kind of stuff. David's already alluded to it. I'm sure you're all aware of it anyway. There is a treasurer's manual, which looks like that. I think the cover's changed yesterday, so I've got an old version. The treasurer's manual has lots of information in there about how you need to keep your paper trail, and it'll become really obvious as we go through this as to why that's really important. You can get hard copies of these from head office. I think they're £5, but if you look on the page on the website that the link for this meeting is on, alongside these presentation slides is a downloadable version of this. So go get it, save it on the desktop somewhere, and you have it available, okay? Areas that cause confusion in the income and expenditure are where I see a lot of churches netting off income and expenditure. What that basically means is if you have an event and you have income of that event of say £400 and you pay £50 out to a speaker, what some churches do will put the income in as £350 because that's what they were left with at the end of it. What you need to be doing is putting the £400 in the income and then £50 in the expenditure. Sounds very straightforward and very obvious, but it doesn't always occur to people to do that, okay? It's important because what it does, again, it gives you proper detail of exactly what your church is doing. It gives a better, more accurate reflection of the activities of the church, okay? It also gives you oversight if any of that income is donations, because donations can get hidden really easily if you're not aware of it with this income and expenditure, okay? The best example is your £400 income and your £50 from the speaker, okay? Your speaker may well donate it back to the church, okay? You need to put it through as a donation, so you would still put it out as an expense and then put it back in as a donation, so you can clearly see what is being donated back to the church. The other best example of this that comes up on a repeated basis are members of the church who may bring you a raffle prize, or they may buy a bottle of wine and say, it's okay, I don't want the money back for it. What you need to do is get them to claim the raffle prize on your expenditure and then mark the sheet that they didn't expect cash and they wanted to donate it back in, and then that way you can see it coming back in as a donation. Okay, there's two really good reasons for this. The first one is if you ever do get to the point where you're claiming gift aid back, unless you can highlight which the donations are, you can't claim it back. If you never paid them for that bottle of wine, you can't claim the gift aid back. If you put the page trail through that you've paid them and they've given you the money back, you can claim the gift aid. Okay. The other reason for doing this, which I have seen on occasions with churches, is there are times where committees change or members come and go, and you can end up in a situation where you've had people that have very generously been donating things to the church on a regular basis, and that no longer happens. Either that they've left the church, they've left the committee, or they're no longer there, or it may just be that they can't afford to keep doing it. And especially in these times where everybody's struggling, that's probably more likely. What that effectively does is, if you're not claiming the expense out under normal circumstances, and now you are, it can look in your accounts like your expenditure has suddenly gone up. And it's actually, the reality of it is your expenditure hasn't gone up, it's actually donations that have gone down. So it gives you a better idea of what's going on in the church. Okay. The other major thing before I move on from this is, on your income expenditure, you mustn't include anything that doesn't relate to the current year. Now, this has come into practice this year. We've had a few queries about this. Okay. Two best examples are real examples that we've got. Okay. A church, if you paid a coach trip deposit, and some have for this year, and they've not been able to take that coach trip because obviously nobody's taking trips anywhere, and it's been deferred to 2021. That expenditure, even though you've paid for it this year, doesn't relate to this year because you haven't been on your trip yet. In effect, the coach company is holding that money for you on deposit. Okay, so it does not go in this year. I will explain where it goes later, which is why we're doing questions at the end. Okay, the same goes of income. If you sell tickets for an event that you're holding in this, tickets for an event that you're holding next year, but you sell them now, it is not income in this year because you're not holding that event in this year. If somebody needs a refund on their ticket, or you don't put the event on, which I know has happened with some churches, they've had to give everybody the money back, you don't want to include it in your income. So anything that does not relate to this year, whether it's coming in or going out, does not go in your income and expenditure. Okay, like I say, well, I'll explain to you where it does go in a moment, but that's really important note to make. Okay, so hopefully everybody's looking so far. It's very difficult doing it like this because you don't get any audience feedback, but I shall plow on. These slides that I'm just skipping over now are just explanations of what I've just said to you, so I'm not missing any information out. It's to go back and have a look at. Right, this is really why we're all here today, the balance sheet. This is the bit that we know confuses churches. I am going to come back to this later. I just want you to have an overview right now as to what it is we're looking to achieve by the end of this tutorial. Okay, the balance sheet is just a list of everything of value that the church has. That is all it is. But the clue's in the title, in that you do have to balance it, okay? But if your income and expenditure, the money you got coming in, the money you got going out, is correct and accurately recorded, everything will balance, including this, okay? So the list includes value of your building, if you have one. It also gives you fixtures and fittings. So if you own anything that's got a value like a laptop, which I'll get to in a moment, then those go in there as well. You list all your bank balances at the end of the year that you're trying to balance, including, not forgetting, any cash in hand, and you add it all up. So basically what you end up with is you end up with a figure of everything value that your church has, okay? What this number here is your income expenditure, how much you've made or lost during the year. And that's what appears in there. Okay, so this is what we're trying to do. by the end of this session, hopefully this will make a lot more sense to you than it hopefully ever has done so far. Okay. Right. This is where we're going to start getting a bit technical, but please bear with me. Like I say, you can get this information and you can hear this explanation over again, however many times you like. Okay. Depreciation. Okay, the depreciation is just reducing the value of an asset over its lifespan. Okay, that the quickest example I can give you is if a church buys a laptop. I know churches do sometimes now. Okay, so in this example, a church has bought a laptop for £300 and they expect it to last 3 years. So in effect, the laptop will cost you £100 a year. So you can spread the cost over 3 years in your accounts. Now I've laid it out here, year 1, 2, and 3, but the easiest way is to go to the next slide and show you, okay? In your income and expenditure for each of those 3 years, it costs you £100 a year. So you can see here in yellow, this is exactly the same form I showed you at the beginning. The depreciation is £100 in each year. So what you're effectively doing is you're affecting your surplus or deficit, how much you've made or how much you've lost in the year. By spreading the cost of it, it means that you don't have to take the hit in your bottom line, if you like, all in one go. Okay, you can spread the cost. Okay, so that's how it would appear in your income and expenditure, £100 each year. In your balance sheet, this is where it sits, just below where the value of your building is. So you've got in 2019, your additions this year is because you've just bought it, you're £300, and in your income and expenditure, which was there, you've got your £100 expense. So effectively, at the end of 2019, you bought it for 300, you've taken £100 out of your expenses for the year. The value of the laptop is £200. Okay. When we go into 2020, the cost of your fixture and fitting, which is effectively your laptop, £300, because you've had another £100 expense for it in this year, it's therefore £200 depreciated, which gives you a value of £100. And then what would happen the following year, your £300 would stay there, your depreciation would go up to £300, and therefore there'd be no value because effectively after 3 years, a laptop's not really worth anything. That is effectively how depreciation works. I'm not going to go any further than that with an explanation. Again, I shall refer you back to the Treasurer's Manual. There is a much fuller explanation of exactly what items that you should depreciate, how you decide how long to depreciate them for. All that kind of information is in here. So there's no point me regurgitating it for you this morning. Really what I wanted you to see was how the entries go into the accounts. So no matter what it is, whether it's a laptop, a projector, a filing cabinet, whatever it is, it all goes in the same way, okay? Some churches don't have anything to go in there at all, and that's fine too. It's just to show you what you can do if you want to, okay? Right, I think when everybody looked at the balance sheet, they probably thought, yeah, I get that every year and I don't really know what to do with it, okay? And you don't know where to start. And that has been the conversation we've been having about how we get churches up and running and give them a starting point to get this to work, okay? And that's what we're doing today, okay? So this looks very confusing, I know, but stick with me and I'm going to walk you through it. The following slides all reiterate what I'm about to tell you now. So what I'm actually going to do is stick with this slide, and then you can actually go away and have a look at the information alongside this, and then you can kind of bend your minds around it, but you should be okay. Right. The first thing we need to do for churches that own your own building, the value of your building must be on your balance sheet, because it's your building and it needs to be recorded somewhere. So you need to insert the value of your building. Now, what we then get is a whole host of questions about how do you decide what value your building is. Okay. There's 3 ways you can do it. You can get a valuation from a surveyor. You can get a valuation from a friendly local estate agent. or you can use the rebuild value from your insurance policy. Now, I can probably feel everybody recoiling in horror at this. Please don't, okay? It is not necessary to obtain a professional surveyor's report on this. It's an unnecessary expense. It's something that you don't need. So even though that is an acceptable way of assessing the value of building, nobody is being asked to run out and do that, okay? Just don't. If you happen to have one because you've had some building work done, then use it. But if you don't have one, do not go out and get one, okay? The second version, using the friendly local estate agent to give you a guide price. Again, if you think that is something that's possible and available to you, if you have somebody in your membership that's able to help with that, then great. But under normal circumstances, especially at the moment, the chances of you getting an estate agent to do that for you are very, very slim. So again, please don't fret about that. That brings us to the rebuild value from your insurance policy. If you own your own building, you're going to be insured. If you have a look at the small print on your policy, there will be a value on there. There always is. So what we're asking you to do is, if the other first two options aren't available to you, which the chances are they're probably not, have a look at your insurance policy and put your rebuild value in there. If that is what you end up doing, what we would ask you to do is just put a note on your accounts, just at the bottom, just a handwritten note to say that is how you've established the value of your building. Okay. Now, just as a side note, if the rebuild value looks ridiculously high compared to what you think is probably more reality, speak to your insurers. We have seen churches where, for other reasons, when we've been looking at their insurance policies, we understand that a building that may be worth £300,000–400,000 is insured for in excess of £1 million on the rebuild value, which is clearly ridiculous. Bearing in mind your premium for your insurance is based on that rebuild value. So it's a good opportunity for you to have a look at what's on there. And if it does seem ridiculous in comparison to what you know about your property, then get in touch with your insurers, have that discussion with them, and it may be that they reduce that rebuild value to something more realistic, and that actually could help you on your premiums. So that's just like a little saving, a little win if you're able to do that. Okay, so that's how you establish the land and buildings. Okay, then you add in any fixed assets. So again, I've used my laptop example here, if you have any. So the value of the laptop at the end of 2020, because we depreciated it for 2 years, is just £100. So that gives you the total value of your fixed assets. So that's your land and buildings and any goods that you've got of value, basically. Okay. The next bit, we should be getting to the realms of easy. Okay. Effectively, you list all your bank balances and all your cash held. Okay. So what you do is you get your end of year bank statements and you list everything you've got. Okay. Now, this bit here where I said add any debtors. As I said at the end, there is explanation of what debtors and also what creditors are. This is where you would add in any money owed to the church. Okay. Going back to the example of the coach trip. Okay. So if your coach trip, you've paid a couple £100 to the coach company and they've held your deposit to next year because you're not going until next year, that is where that money would sit there. Now, the reason it goes in is because even though it's gone out of your bank account, so your bank account would have gone down by that amount, you've not yet used it, and it is not in your income and expenditure. So if you remember right at the beginning, we said it does not go in, okay? That's where it goes there. So you add it back in to money that you effectively still have because you've not yet spent it. So you add everything up, all your current assets, and then what you're going to do is take off liabilities. And liabilities is basically whatever you owe anybody else. Okay. So in this part here will be that fictitious ticket money for an event that you have had in and you've put in the bank, but you've not yet held the event. So the income does not belong in this year, it belongs in the following year. But obviously you will have taken the cash and you will have put it in your bank account, but it's not actually yours until the event has taken place. So what you do is you take it off because you may have to refund it. So once you've taken the value of all your buildings and any stock and any laptops and anything else, all your current accounts, and add back in anything that you've not yet had the benefit of, like your coach trip, and take out any money that you've got that relates to next year that you haven't yet held the event for. You end up with your total net assets. Now, hopefully that makes sense so far, and I'm going to have a drink of water because you can hear I'm getting a bit croaky. That's better. Right. Now, this bit at the bottom that we've put in red, this is the bit that churches historically struggle with, okay? To get you up and running, we need to do what's technically called a bit of jiggery pokery. It's the only way we can do this, okay? The idea is that these two numbers, your total net assets and your accumulated funds balance, they have to be the same, okay? Now, what we need you to do to get this to balance in the first instance, because I think a lot of you are going from a blank sheet of paper, what we need you to do is work out for this year what your income expenditure, either profit or loss, whatever you're doing this year, is, and pop that number in there. That £74 is off the example that we used right at the beginning. That's how much you made during the year, okay? To get these two numbers to balance, what we then need you to do for this year only is to work out what number you need to put in there in that red box to make these two balance. That is the way we get your balance sheet up and running, okay? What would happen in, say, 2021 is that this number here would then go here. So it's your accumulated funds that you then carry forward into your following year. You add on any profit and loss in the following year, which gives you a new figure at the bottom. So when you put these numbers in for the following year and all your changed bank balances, and you add all that up, it should come back to the same as your accumulated funds. Now, one thing that we do see churches do quite often, and I understand why, is this adjustments revaluations box. Yes, you can put a number in there if your accounts don't balance to make them balance, okay? It should only be used if you have an explanation as to why it's wrong. So for example, if your land and buildings, the value you get off the insurance policy is £1 million, and you think, well, that's ridiculous, you speak to your insurers, and that comes down to £700,000 next year. You've got to reduce that down to £700,000, therefore you're never going to balance. So what you would do is put the difference of 300,000 down there and just put a note of explanation to say why you've changed it down. That's what this box is for. It's for like extraordinary items. Unfortunately, it's not a box just to stick a number in so that everything balances. It doesn't work like that. Now, it could be that your income expenditure doesn't balance, in which case you would have to put a figure in there to get it to balance, but it should always carry an explanation for the members, okay? Like I say, if you get everything right in your income expenditure, when you slot the numbers in here, in theory, it should balance. In practice, you know, we're realistic, it doesn't always balance. Trust me, I do it here for a living, and it doesn't always balance at the first time of asking, okay? So, if it doesn't balance, I'm just going to flick through these because that is just an explanation of what we've just spoken about. When things don't balance, okay. What I've done here is put like a little guide for you to double check things in a certain order, okay? And this just comes from experience, knowing which order to approach things in. Really, really basic stuff. On your balance sheet, make sure you've brought all your figures forward, you're not switch numbers, things like that. Make sure all your bank balances and cash are recorded correctly, and always check your maths. Always, 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 because it can be really straightforward to miss it. If everything on your balance sheet looks to be correct and you're confident that you've got all the right numbers in, then you move to your income and expenditure. Again, check all your entries back to your paperwork and ensure everything is only included once, and check your maths. Now, this is the biggie. If something doesn't balance, this is the one where you're going to find it. But checking all entries back to the paperwork, okay, only works if you've got a really strong paper trail, which takes us right back to the beginning and what David said about two people counting cash, your receipt books, everything that's outlined in the Treasurer's Manual. Without a strong paper trail, you're going to find it really, really difficult to balance your accounts. If you have a strong paper trail, it means everything will go in your income and expenditure in an orderly way, which hopefully means when you get to the year end, it should all balance, okay? If that still doesn't work, you need to go back to your bank statement from Barclays or Lloyds or whoever you use and tick back everything to your bank statement and look for any transactions that you think have gone through that haven't yet gone through the bank account, because that'll make a difference as well. For example, if you have issued a cheque for £50 to somebody that haven't banked it in that year, it will have gone out as an expense, but it'll still be sat in your bank account. So you'll need to take that into account as well, okay? At the end of this, I know as treasurers, you're responsible for the accounts, but all committee members, including anyone handling money, needs to comply with any system of documentation you put in place, because without that compliance, as a treasurer, you're going to find it incredibly difficult to do this. You don't want people giving you envelopes with dates and numbers scribbled on the back. You want proper paper trails, and you need everybody to cooperate. I've spoken to many treasurers that take their responsibility very, very seriously, as they should. But if you've got people helping you at an event, taking money on the door, running the raffle, the tea money, everybody that is touching those funds has a responsibility to make sure that they're doing the right thing and they give you the information in good order. If they don't do that, it's going to make life really difficult. So take that message back to your committee and to your members to say it's everybody's responsibility to help get this right. As David said, I'm about to do a shameless plug here for the Trust, because I do work for the Trust. Obviously, we work closely alongside the union to help with their accounts. We do our own accounts and obviously help churches there as well. I'll put a slide in here just about the Trust and a little bit about us and how we operate. We are completely independent of the union, but we run alongside them. Without the union, we wouldn't exist. It's as simple as that. I've put some of the accounts that we have here and the interest rates. Now, yes, of course, I would love you to invest with the Trust so that we can go on and help other churches. I would encourage any of you, if you have any money that attracts an interest rate at the moment, even if it's just a savings account alongside your current account, please go and look at the rates, because I think what you will find is that where we're offering 0.5%, a lot of just standalone church deposit accounts are giving 0.01, in actual fact, pretty much nothing at the moment. Please go and check your rates. You might think, well, it's not going to make that much difference. Every little helps, the Pincher supermarket phrase. So please go ahead and check your rates. If you're interested in becoming a member, or if you are a member and you want to invest more with us, obviously, we'd be more than happy to have that conversation with you. I think that's the point at which I'm done. Like I say, there's a glossary there, just a few terminology items for you, just so that you can go back and review exactly what it is that we're talking about. But that's the end of my explanation, and I will throw it back to David to coordinate any questions. Ask anything you like, really go for it, because the chances are if there is a bit that you didn't understand or you need clarifying, the chances are if you didn't get it, then somebody else might not get it either. So now's your opportunity.
Leslie, can you drop your sharing, please, and then we can come back to the screen so I can see everyone.
There you go.
Can I thank Leslie for that presentation? I hope you found it useful. I hope you found it beneficial. And for those that found it a walk in the park, then that's absolutely fine also, because that means you're doing a good job as treasurer. Can I just put one caveat to what Leslie has said? When she was talking about the valuation of your building, which I know is an incredibly contentious issue and causes headaches for a lot of church treasurers, there is one method that Leslie actually hasn't mentioned, and that is the basis of cost. So if you have some way of knowing what your church cost originally, whether that be 100 years ago or 10 years ago or last week, that is one of the basis of valuation that you can use. So obviously you've got to be able to justify that. So we've got a church that is about to purchase a new building, they obviously will know what it's going to cost them, and then next year when they produce their accounts, they can use that figure. And that actually is possibly one of the most accurate figures that you can use, because it's not an opinion, which is an opinion made by an insurance company, by a surveyor, or by an estate agent. It is a reality, because that's what you've actually paid out in £10 notes. So I don't want to confuse people, but that is one consideration that I think you need to consider. I can see at the moment Kerry, who's got a hand up. Wonderful. Would you like to unmute yourself, Kerry, and come into the room and ask your question?
Okay. This year we've been taking on payments from PayPal. Previously we didn't have that. Previously all our income literally was coming in via the church or via cash from services, which we'd write in a cash book. With PayPal, do we record the payments as cash income in our cash income book, or do I, it's at the moment I've got it on a spreadsheet, or do I record it as a separate cash book, create a separate cash book for it? What would you say is the best way to do that?
Leslie, would you like to address that?
Yeah, okay. Can I just check, Kerry, when you draw the funds down from PayPal, it drops straight into the bank's, into the church's bank account, yeah?
Yeah.
I think the best way of doing it with your knowledge of PayPal is when you take it down from PayPal, you can actually drop the information into an Excel spreadsheet, can't you?
Yeah.
Is that how you're doing it?
Yeah,
okay. Yeah. What I would suggest you do then, for simplicity, if you like, is that when you drop it down into that spreadsheet, use that spreadsheet as your template. So if you drop down, say, £300, and that's what you withdraw and you drop into your local bank account, okay? What you need to do is take that £300 spreadsheet with all your individual transactions, and what we would do here is apportion it out to your different categories, so your donations, ticket sales, whatever it might be. Add it up on your spreadsheet, and those will be the numbers that you would just put in your cash book. You don't need to keep a separate cash book for it. If you've got the spreadsheet and it adds up to the amount that's gone into your bank account, and then on that spreadsheet you've got all your little categories, that is sufficient, and that will give you a really good paper trail, so that if you did need to go back through it and see what it was for, you could. Because what you've effectively got then is got a deposit going into your bank account for the total amount, and you have a spreadsheet explaining what all those amounts are for. Just total them up so that you don't have to put each transaction into your cash book. What you can do is, if you've got a chunk of them and it's all donations, for example, just put that one amount as donations in your cash book, but you'd have that spreadsheet as an audit trail to say this is where they all came from.
Okay, yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Kerry, I'm very sorry. There's a lady that's raised a hand that's got a green jumper on and glasses, but I can't see your name. So would you like to come into the room and introduce yourself? Oh, it's Lynn. It's come back now.
Yeah, it's Lynn. Yeah, it's Lynn from Bognor Church. This might be a little bit off the what you're doing right now, but could you possibly explain the church returns to me?
No, that's not one of my, that's not my department, Lynn.
All right, yeah.
Is Rachel on the call?
I think she was. Well, I think she was planning on it. Is she there?
Rachel, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Rachel, would you like to come in and say a couple of words about the church returns?
I'd appreciate it.
Probably the best thing for me to do is actually have a conversation with you, Lynn, and I can go through it with you, because yes, there is a lot of information in there.
Right,
so
yes, I would like that information.
If you let me know a good time to contact you, I'll be there and I'll talk you right through them.
All right then, thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Lynn, and I'm sure Rachel will help you with that. And it's the old story. If you don't know something or something confuses you, don't just put it in a drawer and forget about it. Call us at head office. We are here to help. Now,
Right, thank you very much.
Thank you for that, Lynn. I've also got another Rachel here. Rachel, would you like to, Rachel Mark 2 or Mark 1, would you like to unmute and ask your question?
Right, my question's to Leslie. This year we transferred quite a large lump sum from our savings account into our normal working account due to a lot of work that we was having done on the church. So what I've done on my monthly spreadsheets, I've put that as a £7,000 income. Is that correct? Do I need to add it? I know it looks as though it's income, but just make it clear that it is the transfer from the savings account.
Okay, that's a really good question, actually, Rachel. I hate to tell you, no, it's not, but you will not be the only person that would do that. That is a regular thing that we get, okay? If you move money from one account to another, it's not income. I don't know, can I share my screen again, David? Because this is a really good, really good question, because this is the one that really confuses a lot of people. So what I'm going to do is just share my screen, and then I can point and show you where it needs to go, okay?
Okay.
Let me just do that again. Let me just flip right back. Right. Oop, I've gone too far now. There we go. That's a really good question. Now, if you've got £7,000, so say you take £7,000 from your savings into your current account because you spent some money on work, okay? The expenditure for the work that you had done will go in your repairs and renewals, okay? Because that's what you spent the money on.
Yeah.
I know David's probably about to say that's it, but we're not going to get into that right now, okay? For the purposes of your explanation, okay, it's an expenditure. So that goes out of your expenses account there, okay? And what that will do is at the end of the year, chances are, knowing the way things are going for churches at the moment, it will end up that it'll look like you've made a massive loss in this year, because effectively you're going to spend out a lot more than that you've got in. So that's reasonable. It's not wrong. It's just the way it is. It's just because you spend more money, okay? So what you do is any costs that you've paid out go in as expenditure, okay? When you get to balancing your accounts here, you just list your bank account balances. The fact that you've transferred it, say, let's pretend that you had it with the trust and you moved it into your non-SNU Trust account, okay? All you're doing is moving it from that column to that column, okay? It's not going anywhere. A bank transfer doesn't mean you've spent the money. So if you put it as an expense or as income, you've not had income, because income is stuff that you've got in from outside activities. What you've actually done is you just move money around within your own accounts. So just moving money around within your own accounts doesn't affect anything at all. You don't need to put it in as income. All you need to do is make sure that whatever you've spent it on goes in as expenses. So if you follow the format that we've spoken about today, if you've spent the money out to a third party, it goes in as an expense, okay? If you've not spent all that £7,000, if there's still, say, 500 quid sat in your current account, that's fine, because it will still show in this list. So your savings will go down by £7,000 in your savings account, but on your current account, it will go up by £500, if you see what I mean, because you put 7,000 in, spent 6.5, so you've still got 500 in your current account. I know it sounds very confusing, but your income and expenditure is just where you actually spend it. Transferring it out and into different accounts is not spending it, and it's not making money. You haven't made £7,000 this year, you've just moved it around. So any bank transfers between different bank accounts never goes in your income and expenditure. What you might have spent it on once you've moved it, that goes in your expenditure, okay? But just moving money around. And this actually touches on why at the beginning I said I wouldn't be going down the route of any churches that have loans with the trust, because that's the same kind of principle with loans. When you make repayments to loans, you're not spending that money, you're just moving the money around. So your current account has got less in it, but you owe less on your loan. It's the same kind of thing. So any bank transfers between different bank accounts that you already have, You don't need to record them on your income and expenditure because it's not income that you've earned and it's not expenses that you've paid out. You're just moving it from one pot to another. So hopefully that makes sense. Did that make sense for everybody?
I think so.
Yeah, okay. Have a look at it again. If you're not sure, we're here. So you can always get in touch with us after the event, okay?
Okay, thanks for that, Rachel. Much appreciated. And we have Helen Bohr, if you'd like to come in and...
Hi, I'm treasurer at Bridge Church. I've just got a couple of questions. The bit about putting the building on the balance sheet, I know that it's not been done in previous years. Yeah. So obviously we need to do it this year. Obviously your spreadsheet isn't going to balance. So do we put it in the bit at the bottom as well, the difference?
Yeah, I mean,
for this year.
Yeah, it's going to be slightly different depending on what you're bringing over from the previous year.
Right.
I mean, obviously what we've been doing, have a look at church accounts when they come in. Some don't even have a temporary balance sheet at all. Some just send a list of like the bank balances. Some have a go, but it's like, oh no, you can see they're just reaching for numbers to try and get the thing to work. So it really does depend on what your starting point for this year is.
Right.
Yes, you need to put the value of your building in if it's not been in there in previous years. And yes, you will need to add it in at the bottom to make it balance. So really, if you're putting something in the top, you're going to need to put it in the bottom. Otherwise, it's never going to balance. So if that's what you're doing to make it right, so if everything else that you've got in there, your content is in good order, and it's just those two bits that are missing, put it in at the top. And you know, I said you've got that adjustments revaluation box at the bottom. That's where you put it in. So you put it in both sides, and then you carry on going forwards.
That's what. I've just got another question, if I may. You mentioned about putting money from a savings account into the trust accounts, the savings accounts, because of the better interest rates.
Mm-hmm.
If I know we've got about £2,000 in our savings account, which you say we're getting 0.01% on. Yeah. If I needed to withdraw it, if we put it into the SNU Trust and I needed to withdraw it, can we just do that without, provided we've got like all the two signatures that we need, can we just draw it out instantly if we have a bill to pay or something?
Yeah, we can do it a few ways. The SNU Trust, when you set your account up with us, every year we ask you to nominate your signatories. The forms that we've done this year, we've actually changed slightly, and we actually ask people to put their local bank account details on, because as a lot of you are probably finding from your local banking and your personal banking, sort code and account numbers now are being matched to account names. So we're having to comply with that. Once we've got that online, church withdrawal forms are available to download from our website, or we can email you one. It never changes this form, so you can keep it and just print it as required. Just fill it in, sign it up, like you say, in accordance with the signing instructions. You can scan it back to us. We will transfer the funds the day we receive the scan, assuming that it's here within our bank cut-off deadlines, which is about 3:30. So yeah, we will transfer it the same day for you. We can either transfer it back to your local current account, and then you can pay your bills from there. But what we do for churches quite regularly is pay it onto third parties. So if you want us to pay your gas bill or your bills or your decorator, whatever it might be, 99% of the time now they have bank details to accept automatic payments on their invoices. Just scan the invoice over with the withdrawal form and we'll pay it straight onto them for you. And every time we do a transaction, we always send you a statement confirming that it's gone, so that you're comfortable that you know where you're up to with your cash.
And is there a maximum that we can actually draw out, if you like? No?
No, it's your money.
Right.
It's your money. If you need it, we transfer it back out again. No problem at all.
Thank you. Sorry, I've just got one other little question, if I may. Yeah. Regarding the PayPal that Rachel was talking about earlier.
Yeah.
When people pay money into PayPal, obviously there's a PayPal fee to pay.
Mm-hmm.
Do we just put it through our books as the money that's actually coming from PayPal to us, or what the person has paid into PayPal?
Good question. Okay, this takes us back to where I was saying about making sure all your income and your expenditure is accurately recorded. So when you download stuff from PayPal, anybody that's got it will know this, you have the amount that the person paid you, the site fee, and then what you actually get from PayPal. Yeah. So what you need to do in your books is on your income, put the full amount that the person paid. So let's say you're doing an event and they're paying £10 for the ticket and the fee's 20p or whatever it is. Okay. So you need to put your £10 in your income, and your 20p needs to go in as like bank charges in your expenditure.
Right.
So you've got the in and the out. So one netted off against the other appears in your bank statement. And like I said, if you keep your spreadsheets from PayPal as you download them, you've got that audit trail of what came in, what your bank charges are, what goes out. So that keeps your paperwork straight, so that you can make sure you balance.
Thank you very much, Leslie. Thank you.
No problem.
I don't want to create total chaos because I'm usually good at that. I have to admit, I don't have a great experience of PayPal. I've never operated it because I've not been a treasurer for a long time. But it was my understanding that if you established a charity account with PayPal, there are no charges. So if you're paying charges, maybe that's you need.
I thought it was, sorry to interrupt, I thought it was if you're a charity, which we are, we've got it registered and everything with PayPal, it was just a lower fee.
Maybe that's the case. Then I suggest, Helen, you have more experience because you're doing the job than I do, looking at the outside. But that is a point. When you set your PayPal account up, you need to set it up in the name of the church.
Yes, we have to.
Not as because if you set it up as a personal account, you're breaching the constitution, but also you're paying more fees, and we don't want that. So thanks for qualifying. You've educated me, Helen. Thank you so much. Okay, we have Angela Hoare from over the border in Dundee. Welcome, Angela. Come and please unmute yourself and come into the room.
Hi there. I was just wondering, I've inherited from the last treasurer quite a comprehensive spreadsheet, which looks very similar in a lot of ways, but there's differences too. Is there going to be a template for like starting our books next year, like so everyone's on the same sheet, if you know what I mean? Like having the spreadsheets with set formulas in, so it kind of keeps us all right, if you want it all to look the same.
Right. First of all, it's not necessary for all church accounts to look exactly the same. The template that comes out is a paper rather than an Excel spreadsheet. It is a guideline really. I mean, I know David will jump in now if I'm wrong, but as far as I'm aware, it is a guideline from the union to help people lay them out. If you have a better, more sophisticated way of doing it, then as long as at the end of the day you provide accounts in a solid format that works for you, that is absolutely fine. There is no intention that you have to use our format. So if you've got one that works for you, you carry on and you use it. Okay. The thing is, with the categories that we've used in the examples on the PowerPoint, they're the ones that I've taken from the template from the union. If you're doing your own on a spreadsheet, you might rename those categories that are more relevant to the activities of your church. It means more to your members. It gives you that transparency and that better set of information. So why wouldn't you do that? That, as far as I'm aware, that is absolutely fine.
Okay.
Can I just come in here? But I'm not going to in any way change what Leslie said, which I fully support.
You disagree with me, I don't mind.
I'm not going to disagree with you. Can I just say, Angela, and this is a message to everybody, when I started as a church treasurer in about AD 337, there was no such things as spreadsheets. We did basic bookkeeping, double entry bookkeeping in that case. Now, I recognise that spreadsheets are a very powerful and useful tool that the treasurers can use to make their job easier. And I'm all for making people's lives easier. But can I just put one word of warning with them? You need to have that spreadsheet on your computer backed up in hard copy. So either you operate the system with the church account book, which is available from the union, and you keep your hard copy in that, or you actually print off when you've done your monthly accounts, which you produce for your church committee, you actually print those off and you keep them in hard copy. I know computers are a lot more reliable today than they ever were in the past, but there is always a situation if your computer crashes, and I'll put a pound to a penny if I was a betting man that will happen somewhere mid-December when you're just coming up to your audit, and you then go into panic mode because you've just lost 12 months figures that you've then literally got to go back to your books of prime entry and recreate. So please, if you're using spreadsheets to keep church accounts, that's fine, but you must keep a hard copy backup. It is so important, and it will make your life so much easier should something go wrong. So hope that helps, Angela.
Thank you very much.
Rachel's disappeared, but she's still got a hand up. I'm presuming she's she doesn't want to. Oh no, Rachel, have you got another question or not? No, okay, that's fine. Do we have anybody else that's oh, we've got Pat Seymour. Pat, would you like to come into the room and
it's Bill Tomlinson, he's our treasurer. He's got a question for you.
I'm sorry, I've just asked. We'll take that. We'll go to Bill. That's fine, and then we'll come to Pat Seymour. Sorry.
Oh, sorry about that.
It's just mixed up. That's always a dangerous thing to do. Yes, Bill. What can I help you?
Hi there. I'm a new treasurer of the church here, and I'm therefore coming out to my new first church balance sheet at the end of this year. And I went along with some of the stuff that Helen was asking questions about property. And I'm just wondering where I'm going to bring it into the accounts, because it seems there's never been in there before. And so when I naturally did a land registry search to see who does own the property and all that, it just said, well, it's under the control of the SNU trustees. So I'm thinking, well, okay, I don't know whether the trustees do insure it or anything. It's another question, I suppose.
We insure it.
But I also am wondering whether, as just trustees looking after it, that the church really is in control of it, subject to yourselves, obviously being good boys and girls, you do keep an eye on them, but basically that it's the church that's in control of it, and therefore it's a church asset.
Absolutely. Do you want me to do that, Leslie?
Right, I tell you what, David, you do the constitutional side of it, which is where you're about to go, and the trustee side of it, and I'll do the accounting side of it to back up what you're about to say. You go first.
Okay, that's brilliant. So from a point of view, we get this question quite often, and when people check with the land registry, they find that it is registered in the name of the SNU, and then the treasurer takes a big intake of breath because the SNU have pinched our church. The majority of the churches, well, in virtually all of the churches, are held in some form of trust. I think about 200 of our churches are held in what we call sole trust, and that is where the SNU is the custodian trustee. The trust format in law is just a way of protecting the church assets and property and holding them for members in perpetuity, so that there is a consistency moving forward with the trustee being the union, but the benefit of that trust is for the individual church. So the property is vested in the church, but held in trust by the union. Now,
so can I just clarify that? You say vested in the church, so does that mean then the church really owns it but can't do much with it?
That's right. Well, it's not that you can't do much with it. You use it to propagate spiritualism, which is what the basis of your should be. So you are responsible for ensuring, for the upkeep, etc., etc. And remember, this is another issue that worries people. The union cannot, in any way, shape, or form, because of the provisions of the Constitution, affect the assets of the church without your direction. If you go back right an hour ago to when we first started this meeting, I made a public statement that the members are responsible for the direction of the church. The power is vested in the members. The responsibility is vested in the members. So if the church fails for whatever reason, and the union works very hard that that doesn't happen, ultimately it is the members' decision. If the members decide to close the church, they actually have to hold a members' meeting and pass a resolution to close the church.
Right.
And at that point, the union will step in. Obviously, the assets of the church have to be collected and sold. and then those assets are transferred into what we call suspense, where they are held for a period of 6 years. And during those 6 years, anybody in your locality that starts up a spiritualist church can apply to the union if they are establishing a church based on the 7 principles of union spiritualism. They could apply to actually have some of those funds to support a new church.
Right.
So that is the only situation, but I can't say strong enough to you, the church belongs to the members, but without getting too complicated and trying to keep it simple, one of the weaknesses of the church is historically, when the church is vested in individuals, we know as spiritualists, we believe that life is eternal, but we also accept that we're not here forever. At some time, we are going to die. And this is where the operation of trust comes in, because it gives uninterrupted continuity, because obviously there's a thing called local trust where church individuals actually are the trustees in place of the SNU, the custodian trustee. And that means as people change, as people move away from the church, as people die, there are legal steps that have to be taken at cost, considerable cost, with a solicitor to actually replace those trustees. So once a church is gone into sole trust, hopefully the union is here forever, or certainly for a long, long time. You don't have all the costs related to continually replacing trustees.
Right. I fully understand and appreciate your reasoning, what you're just saying to me. But that, of course, has given rise to another question. Is that now I want to say, well, it's one of our many assets at the church. So how do I value it when I try to bring it onto the balance sheet for the first time, probably in many years?
Well, that comes back to the notes that Leslie has done. And as I said, either valuation at cost, or alternatively, you could get a surveyor to charge, but they will charge you for that service.
Certainly.
You could also get, as Leslie said, an estate agent to give you an approximate value. And also you could go to the insurance value and use any one of those 3 methods. There's one thing I should tell you here, and this is something maybe worth considering.
Sure.
Any asset, whether it's a church building or anything else, is only worth what somebody is prepared to pay on any given day. So effectively, that figure in the balance sheet is effectively meaningless.
Right.
But it needs to be there because it gives your membership, the union, and the Charity Commission a true reflection of the financial state of the church.
So, in fact, to continue taking your advice, which I do appreciate, would it make sense if you as trustees, yes, they knew that is, as trustees, had a value at the time you became trustees, would they be able to inform me of that value and I will just carry that value forward?
I would very much doubt that we would have done that, because it certainly wasn't current practice in the past. But if you have church records going back, church minute books are always a good place of finding.
I will try and locate them.
You could establish an original cost.
Thank you very much indeed for your help. Most appreciated.
Okay, that's fine. Leslie, you can now go to the accounting if you don't feel I've covered it sufficiently.
No, mine was a lot more straightforward than David's. I knew it would be. Obviously, David's gone down the reason behind sole trusteeship, and obviously you've heard that explanation.
Certainly, I grasp that.
On a pure business accounting perspective, all assets should be recorded in accounts somewhere. Okay, certainly. So going back to your original premise of, well, if you go to land registry, it's in the name of the union, so why is it on your balance sheet? And what David said about obviously churches thinking that the union are going to pinch their buildings, etc. Working on your assumption at the beginning was, if we valued all the church buildings and stuck it on the union's balance sheet, Obviously, all churches quite rightly would go, "Oh, hang on a minute, that's our building."
More than multimillionaires, eh?
But we need to account for it somewhere. That, as it stands at the moment, if a church building isn't on the balance sheet, it doesn't exist. It's not accounted for anywhere.
Right.
And we need to do that, because I think at the union AGM, I think I'm right in saying that a question was asked about, what is the value of all the churches within the union?
Understandable.
And until everybody puts them on the balance sheets, it's very hard to quantify, very difficult. So, it's one of those things that's useful. But in an accounting term, the value of that property, that building, should be in some account somewhere. And if it doesn't go on yours, in theory, you'll think, well, maybe it should go on the unions. And then obviously that would be completely incorrect, because the union are only the custodian.
I hope they'll never end up in the accounts and the ownership as a charity commission. That's one thing.
So that from the accounting perspective, it needs to be recorded somewhere, and it shouldn't be on the unions, and therefore it can only ever be on yours. So
I will try and locate a valuation from the past rather than commit ourselves to further expenses, I think, in having a valuation.
Don't pay any surveyors. Don't do that.
Exactly.
Okay.
As long as
Thank you very much for your help.
As long as it is said, the church is reflected and recorded, because it's ironic. I get loads of church accounts come across my desk on a weekly basis, and their biggest asset, which is their building, is not there.
No.
And it just seems crazy. Absolutely. Anyway,
seems very odd to me.
And I hope we didn't baffle you too much. And it
no.
Can I go then to Pat Seymour and ask you to unmute, Pat, and come into the room, and then we'll move on to David.
Thank you, David. Good morning, everyone. I'm the Vice President of Croydon. I'm not the Treasurer, but this is for my information only. I know my Treasurer is on here somewhere this morning, but I can't see her. Our accounts are audited by 2 people. And does there come a point, Leslie, when we have to bring in professional auditors? Do we have to reach a certain income that exceeds what, these 2 people should be doing? And if so, when we bring in professional auditors, are there certain levels that they can charge us? Because I have known in the past a church that paid out an enormous amount of money to have their accounts audited, and I really felt that these accountants were really taking them to the cleaners. But obviously, it was nothing to do with me. So perhaps you can answer that for me.
Okay, I'll defer to David in a moment on the level of income, because that's in the church rules, and hopefully David could have a quick shifting.
I think I know what it is, but I'll let.
Excuse me, I'll carry on with my explanation while you look it up. The answer to the first part of your question about, yes, there is a limit. Once your income goes over whatever David's about to announce, you do need to get them audited professionally rather than using 2 independent examiners. Once you get to that point, and you do need to engage somebody, unfortunately, charges are dictated by the market rate, but you are right, Pat, that you do need to be mindful that you're not being taken advantage of. Okay, absolutely shop around. Any bookkeeping organisation worth any consideration will not have a problem with having a conversation with you about it. What I would say is, again, go right back to the beginning of this presentation about your paper trail. Okay, if your paper trail is good and solid and in good order, it will be considerably cheaper to get them audited than if it's all stuffed in a carrier bag, because it's just going to take them longer to sort it out. So if you think you're going to fall into the category of needing a professional auditor, make sure your paper trail is good, put it on spreadsheets, give them everything in good order, in good time. It's no different to what we need to do here when our auditors come in. If things take longer, it costs more. It's as simple as that. And you may find that any organisation and any accountants taking your books on for the first time may quote quite high, but you can have that conversation about, if we ensure that everything comes to within certain deadlines, because obviously with churches you want your accounts to be in a certain time frame so that you can have your AGMs under normal circumstances, things like that. So if you're going to go in and dictate a time frame that you're only going to have the paperwork, say, from the end of January, and we need them done in 8 weeks or whatever it might be. If you're going to go in and put those kind of parameters and give them the assurance that your paper trail is going to be good and in the manner in which they want it, you can probably to an agreement of what you think a fair price is. Okay. Now, what you need to be careful of is if you don't deliver it in the manner in which you said, they may try and charge you more. But it also means that after that first year, if you have exceeded their expectations on the standard of the paperwork that you've given them, they might say, right, okay, we will only charge you, or next year if you come back to us, we will reduce the rates because we can see that it's in good order. But obviously, that can change year on year if you've got treasurers coming and going, or if you've got cooperative committee members not giving you that envelope with a bit of a note stuck on it. So unfortunately, you just need to shop around is the answer on the charges. Don't get taken for a ride, though, is what I would say. David, what was the answer on the limit? Is it 15,000?
No, the limit is 20,000. Actually, 19 in Rules for Churches, page 26, a church which has had an income or expenditure of more than £20,000, not including capital items, in either of the last 2 accounting years, must at its AGM appoint a professional accountant or firm of accountants as its independent examiner. Just to add to what Leslie has said, again from experience, most accountants will do a measure of charity work at reduced fees if you have that conversation with them. I would say your average church, if there is such a thing, with an average kind of transactional churn, would be paying somewhere around £200 to £400. And if an auditor asks you for more than £400, my approach or advice to you would be find another auditor. And if you can find retired accountants that have the necessary qualifications, then that is equally a good way of going about it. Because, you know, especially at the moment, many of our churches are going to lose money this year, and £200 or £300 is going to make a big effect on the church's income and expenditure. So fine, if you've got that level of income, you are required. There is also a requirement with the Charity Commission as well about submission of accounts and the various requirements that they need in submitting your accounts. But that is really a whole other ball game. What you've got to be concerned about is the constitution of your church, which is Rules for Churches, which lays down £20,000.
Thanks, David. I knew you'd find it. I couldn't.
Years on GPC, but never mind. Can we then come to David? And David, would you like to unmute yourself and come forward?
Yeah, just a question out to Leslie.
Yeah.
Because we have an accountant and he normally puts our yearly sheet in what you've just been talking about, does that mean I have to do it as well as him, or can I just let him do it?
So he draws them up in a certain format for you, does he?
He does, yeah.
Okay, yeah, you can just submit those. Going back to the lady that was asking, the lady from Dundee, I think it was, about she has her own version of Excel to sort of produce them in a way that's suitable for her church. In the same vein, if you do have somebody who professionally draws up your accounts for you, they will give you a report with all the information on. That is perfectly sufficient. You don't need to then take those numbers and put them into the template that the union send you your church returns. That's not necessary. If you have them professionally drawn up and you've got that document, just submit that with your returns. That is perfectly fine. You do not need to do anything further than that.
Right, okay. And another, the lady that mentioned PayPal saying about fees and stuff like that, and then David said about the Charity Commission. Some of the fees, what people don't know about, or what I've been finding out myself, is when people go on to pay, say they pay, I don't know, £5 to you, PayPal say to them, do you want to destroy your money? Now, if they press that button, that's when you're charged on that £5. So what you need to say to people is PayPal is already secure. Nobody can take any more money out of their bank, and you can't take any more money out of their bank. So they don't need to press that button. And when they press that button, there's a percentage that comes out of that £5 that they're supposed to be giving you. And that's what I found out over the amount of time that we've been using it. I have been trying to tell people not to press it, but we are losing nearly, I think it's nearly £70 over the side of what people have been paying us because they've been pressing that button. So if you put in there somewhere where if they press that button, it does come out of the money that they're using, they're putting into your accounts.
Okay, thanks, David. Just to be clear, what does the button say when they do it?
Do you want to secure your money?
Do you want to, sorry?
Secure.
Secure, got you.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you want to secure your money, you say no.
You ask them to say no. Obviously, you can't make them say no, but ask them to say no because it's already secure in the first place.
So is it like are they taking like a small premium for like an insurance thing so you can claim it back?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
If you read the small print, it does say that it makes it more so reliable that if fraudsters do try and get into your PayPal account, that it's more secure, but it isn't. They don't give you any more securement than what they set up in the first place.
Got you. So it's like a transactional insurance policy kind of thing.
It's just PayPal trying to make more money out of people that's using PayPal.
Okay, well, wasn't aware of that, but I'm sure everybody can take that on board if they use PayPal. Thank you.
Do a supplemental to David's first question and say, yeah, absolutely. If you've got an auditor that produces your accounts, that's what we need from a point of view from the union. But again, coming back to audit costs, if you as the treasurer produce the work that we've talked about in today's session, in as much as an up-to-date income and expenditure account and a balance sheet, albeit that the auditor may tweak that, but if you give it to him in that form, he's actually got less work to do, and that should mean he will charge you less money. So just that's possibly a good reason for actually producing the information that we've talked about today yourself, rather than paying an auditor that is charging you an hourly rate to do it for you. I'm a great believer, if I can do something myself, I don't pay anybody else to do it.
I can confirm that.
Thanks, David.
All right. Can I come? Thank you, David. Thank you for your input. Can I come to Malvina from the Isle of Wight? Welcome, Malvina, and
hello.
Lovely to see you both.
I have a question about the limit of the amount. You say £20,000. On the Charity Commission, when you go to put in your balances at the end of the year, by the end of October, I understood from what they say that it's 10,000. I would like to know whether I've got it wrong or is correct.
I think there are different levels within the Charity Commission submission about your income level depends on how much information you actually have to submit to the Charity Commission. But the important point here, Malvina, yes, you have those responsibilities to the Charity Commission when you become a registered charity, but the important point here is from the constitutional point of the church, that £20,000 threshold, if you breach that, the Constitution requires you to appoint a professional auditor. That's okay.
I understand, yeah.
All right. And I learned something the other day. I can't remember who I was talking about it, but yes, churches with a smaller income have to actually provide less rigorous information in their return to the Charity Commission. So, and obviously, any church that doesn't take more than £5,000 can't register as a charity, because that's the threshold. That's the first threshold.
Yeah, okay, that's fine.
Yeah, this conversation about the Charity Commission as well has just maybe I think something else to let you know. In terms of the Charities Commission submission, like David said, the smaller your income expenditure, the less information they do ask you when you're doing your online submission, which you've clearly been doing. If you do fall into the category of the higher income, I think on the Charity Commission it's over 15,000, they start to ask you for a bit more detail. The kind of detail they start asking for has spooked a few churches, and we've had a few panicked phone calls and people have logged on. because it starts asking you for your fixed assets and your total net current assets and things like that, that most churches would just think, I don't know what they're asking for there. If you have a look at the balance sheet format that will be coming out to you and that we've spoken about and that is on the slides today, those little subheadings are in there for you. So if you can take this model that we're suggesting out in your income expenditure and your balance sheet, if you do fall into that category of when you log on to the Charity Commission website and have to start putting your numbers in and you get them asking you for that kind of detail, if you've got your balance sheet right using the format that they're suggesting in front of you, all those numbers that they ask you for are on that piece of paper, which hopefully will take that fear factor out for people having to submit, because I know it's there. Like I said, we've had a few panic phone calls from people sort of halfway through things trying to work out what number goes where. So if you use that format that we're suggesting, I have deliberately used that terminology, even though it's difficult for for treasurers that aren't trained professionals to be able to think, well, why are they calling it that? It just sounds so corporate. The reason we've left it in the way it is so that you can literally get that piece of paper, look at the Charity Commission website, and the numbers that they ask for are easily identifiable on your balance sheet.
Yeah.
And hopefully that will help as well.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks very much.
Well,
Malvina, a point that's been made from the chat box, there's one or two people saying that they back their computer records up either on a stick, a USB, or back it up to a cloud. That is all very well, but if you read the Treasurer's Manual, it does emphasise the need and security of having a hard copy backup.
Can I just say,
Sorry, Malvina, yes, come on.
Can I just say that I do only hard copies? I don't do a spreadsheet, and I'm quite up on technology. I like the hard copies, and I like what you had many, many years ago in your accounts, where it gave you the ability to balance your monthly accounts with the bank every time. And it doesn't appear to be on any accounts now from the SNU, but I do use it.
Well, can I say the church account book, that facility is still within the hard copy church account book. And again, having done the job and also audited churches, and I'm not looking for work, by the way, if anybody says, oh, will you audit my church? No, the answer is no. Speak to Leslie. But having audited churches, if there is something fundamentally wrong, when you start that exercise that Leslie explained to you about going back and ticking back everything, if you can see by that analysis, that monthly balancing, bank reconciliation and analysis, you can quite easily pick up where a problem is.
Absolutely.
And however adept you are at figures, bookkeeping, accountancy, mathematics, you'll always find that maybe you've transposed a figure or you've picked a figure up incorrectly. And to me, 10p is harder to find than £1,000. I always find £1,000, it's more worrying when you realise you're £1,000 out, but it's always easier to find the £1,000 than the 10p from my experience. At this point, I would really like to bring our financial director, Danny, in, who hasn't really had a great deal to say. Danny, have you got anything you would like to add to what's been said, or any comments that you would wish to make?
Yes, please. It's checking the accounts. A lot of churches ask their members to check the accounts. When it's checking, it's not just signing to say the accounts are right. They do have to have the receipts and everything and go through them. And if you're asking them just to sign it, you're not really being fair to them, because that's a legal document that's saying, I've checked them and they're right. So you do have to ask that, or explain to them what that job is. And as David taught me a couple of months ago, it's looking in the minutes for bigger spends that the committee has agreed to spend that much and then gone to the members if it's not. but it is checking everything. So please think when you're asking people to just sign these accounts that's not very fair to them, and it needs to be checked properly, because the money belongs to the members. It's not the committees, it's the members. And so, as Leslie said, once you've got the accounts looking like they should be, then the members can see. And it's Leslie that's put in about having the previous year's accounts next to it, because again, your members can say, well, we're losing on Sundays and we're winning on Wednesdays. It's up to you to show the members what how you're doing in the church. But it is that part that I really want to get over, that please get them checked properly. Leslie also intimated about pieces of paper. It's not good enough just to put your balances on a bit of note paper and then send them in, because your members have not seen that, have they? That's just what you're sending. So if we can get it, and the reason why we've started to do this, and me and Leslie has been speaking on that, is because when a church wants to have a loan or anything, the first thing that's looked at is your accounts, so that, you know, can you afford this, can you not afford it? So if we've got that information, things run a little bit quicker. So that's why we need them done. And that's me spoken. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. You make some very good points there. And usually when I approach an audit, one thing I ask in the deliverables list that I will provide to a church is for a full set of committee minutes for the year, to be able to track back if any large items of expenditure have been made, that they have been agreed through the committee. Because remember, one or two people cannot act in isolation. The responsibility rests with the committee as a whole, and the committee should make the decisions, not one officer, not one person. It's a joint thing. And you may feel that's very onerous, but ultimately, my view was always as a treasurer was, this is not my money. This is charitable funds, and handling charitable funds on behalf of the charity, it brings with it a responsibility and an accountability. And I've, as a treasurer, have got to be able to demonstrate that to the people that I answer to, the members, the union, and the Charity Commission. And that's why transparency is so important. And that's why if you run your church by following rules for churches, you will not go far wrong. Trust me. Carol Ellis has asked if she can ask Danny a question about Zoom invoices. Carol, do you want to come on and do that?
Yes, thank you, David. Carol Ellis, I'm President of South Wales District Council and Cardiff Church. Danny, we weren't able to, for the District Council, we weren't able to set up an account with Zoom under an organisation name. So the decision we made was it's under my name and I pay it direct debit every month. And then when the invoice comes through to me by email, I pass it on to the South Wales District Council and they reimburse me that way. That's one question. Does that sound okay to do that? The name of the church is on the invoice. My name.
Yeah, well, sorry. I was going to say yes, because I've set up the same for the District Council of Manchester.
Yeah.
My name is on it, but it's also in the name of the district. It's not. So it's just as the same as any other expense. As long as you've got that paperwork to say what it is, then there's not a problem, and you put that down.
Okay, now that one's okay. But there is one church and their invoice isn't saying the name of the church on it, only the name of the person that it was set up in and the name and address of the person on that invoice. I've asked them to put it on there in writing, handwritten at the moment, and to sign it, but I'm pushing that they should have the name of the church on those invoices from Zoom.
I think it's you need the name of the church on the invoices because it belongs to the church, and then the church, and if it's on the invoice, then when say that person leaves, then they don't take it because the emails will be going to that person, whereas mine go to the district council.
Okay, thank you for
that.
I think
I'm right.
And I think, Carol, it would be right, and I don't have a great experience of Zoom, but Rachel is on the call. I would imagine it would be quite easy by contacting Zoom, either by email or maybe able to do it within your account function to actually just change the name that the account is registered in. It's doable. Everything is doable, Carol. So
yeah. Thank you.
Okay, one or two people saying that they didn't want to upset donors to their church by asking them to secure the funds. That obviously is an individual decision that you would have to make at the church committee. And if you decided not to do that, that's absolutely fine. That is your call. I think PayPal, it's part of the modern world. There's also another issue that we haven't touched on today, and that is the idea of contactless payment, whether that be by way of collections. One or two churches are now moving to get the necessary technology that people can pay a donation by contactless credit card or the phone or whatever. So again, that's something we are encouraging the churches to look into, because we know that I think we're fast approaching a cashless society. And if people don't carry money anymore, as a lot of youngsters don't, so I am told, not being one, I don't know, but they, most people have got their phone or the card and you just tap it, and it can be a good way of increasing the income to the church, because people tend to give more when they're not actually handing over physical cash. That's actually a proven point. So I think we have pretty well covered everything as far as the chat box. I don't see any more blue hands. Are there any more questions very quickly before we call this session to a close? Can I just ask you, please, if you haven't already done it, go to the chat box and put the name of the church that you're representing here today. It just helps us to get an idea how effective these sessions are. We would also very much welcome your feedback, whether that be done either in email to Leslie, Danny, or myself, or Rachel at head office. If you found this session useful, if you've got suggestions to make the sessions better, if there are other aspects of church administration that you would like to be covered in these sessions, then that is obviously something that we'll take on board. Alan Rawnsley is on the NEC with his portfolio being training, and we recognise that training has to be delivered at many levels within the organisation. I've got Phil Robinson who is waving a blue hand at me. Phil, would you like to just come in before we end?
Thank you very much. Phil Robinson from Darlington Spiritualist Church and Awareness Centre. It took me the whole meeting to realise how to raise a hand, to be honest, so that tells you how much.
Take no whiz.
My question was around the auditing of books, because where I live, we were in a lockdown for quite some time, and then we're in a localised lockdown for quite a long time. And usually the auditors that we would have we're also in a level 3 lockdown area, so we've not had ours done yet. Is there any sort of guidance as to what we need to do? Because obviously it's quite late in the year, we've still not had ours done yet. I wasn't sure who could answer, but...
Yeah, happy to answer that, Phil. It's quite simple. We recognise that because of the unprecedented situation at the moment, a lot of churches have not been able to hold an annual general meeting, and that really is not a problem. The union, from the very start of lockdown back in March, said if your church couldn't hold its AGM just drop us an email, make us aware. That's absolutely fine. Now, we cannot obviously just lose a year's accounts.
Oh, yeah.
That's not possible. So hoping and praying that we are actually able to hold physical annual general meetings next year at some point, hopefully earlier rather than later, you will then be required to actually submit to your members 2 separate sets of accounts that have been audited in line with the audit provisions of your church, and also then agreed by the members. And once those accounts have been agreed, then obviously they are then submitted on to the union and the Charity Commission. If your church has produced your audit, but you haven't been able to have a members meeting, you can still submit those accounts based on agreement of a committee meeting to the Charity Commission. So that is quite acceptable. Pass the accounts through your committee meeting, and then you can lodge them with the Charity Commission, which means you've met their requirements. But regardless of whether you've done that or not, you still have to lay those accounts before your members, because remember, as I said right at the beginning, that's where the power and control lies, within the membership, and you have to account to them. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, just following up quickly on that, because obviously we've not had ours audited at all for this year. Would we just get that done next year if we don't have the opportunity this year?
As soon as you possibly can, just get the accounts audited. The rules obviously apply. Unfortunately, my crystal ball is a little bit cloudy and I don't know how it's going to work. But if we are not able, because of the COVID situation, still not to hold AGMs in the normal time, which is by the end of April next year, if that's not possible, you will then actually have to apply to the union again for dispensation to delay your AGM once again. But sooner or later, at some point, you have to lay those accounts, get them audited and lay them before your members. The only thing, 1 or 2 churches and organisations that I do audit, I'm quite looking forward to the work this year, because it's going to be much less, because we're going to have been closed for 9 months in some cases. So the transactions going through the books will be a lot less. And remember, obviously, if you use a professional accountant and the workload is drastically reduced, be cheeky enough to say to him, well, we've had a tough year. The church has not made any money or made as much money as it would normally do. We appreciate that the audit process will be less because there are less transactions. Will you reduce your fee this year? Or better still, do it for nothing. If you don't ask, you don't get. Okay, Phil?
Yeah, I've got one more question, if that's all right, just to be a pain. The other thing I was going to ask, obviously, because a lot of our books have been empty, for the income side of things anyway. Is there any way that we can, I don't know, go through the insurances and claim loss of earnings or stuff like that? Because when I worked out the other day, we've lost around about £6,000 just in bills, but then we've got loss of earnings on top of that as well. So is there any guidance as to what we can do about that?
The insurance industry moved very, very early in the lockdown to declare that there was no claim against the insurance policy. It's an interruption. I don't know whether you would class it as an act of God, an interruption beyond their control. And clearly, if every business and organisation in the world claimed against their insurance company, there'd be a lot of very poor insurance companies. So I'm afraid, Phil, that is, from my understanding, and I know there was a challenge in the High Court about this, the answer is no, you can't claim off your insurance.
All right? Perfect. Thank you.
Can I just quickly say, for all of you that don't know, that you can use online banking now. So you would set it up with, I don't know, 3 members to sign in. The money is moved by 2 signatures or 2 codes that's put in from the bank. It's easier for you because you're at home. It can't be a a husband, a wife, or a family member are the two people that's going to move the money. And you can't have a credit card, debit card, anything at all. But it does make it easier, especially at this time with the lockdowns, if you can change to telephone banking. But you will have to see your own church about, your own bank about that. But it is trying to help you move forward at this time. Thank you.
And we've actually now got more questions coming in. But so in the last 6 minutes, very quickly, Angela from Dundee, can we come back with you?
Hey, we were just discussing this. We have online banking, we've got that set up, and that's great. We set up PayPal, but it's not set us up as a charity, so we've tried to contact them and it's not working. So I was wondering about if people wanted to make bank transfer donations, like a few pounds if they wanted to, what the situation is with putting the account number and sort code on like our Facebook page. Is that something that we shouldn't be doing?
No, absolutely.
Is that okay?
You know, there's nothing that they can do with that information.
That's what we thought.
Withdraw funds. And if you do publish that information so that your members can pay directly into the church account, you know, to support the church, if the members can afford to be able to do that, there's no problem with that at all, because as I say, there's no, if you publish that information, there's no way I could take that information and withdraw all the funds in your account.
That's great. We just want to double check that we were okay to do it.
Yeah.
Angela, it didn't work.
Yeah, I mean, if your committee are concerned or your membership about that, if you just think of it in terms of when you get your gas bill or when you get that invoice that we're talking about, having worked on the property, every invoice that you get these days has a sort code and account number so that you can make the payment over. You just,
I thought so. It's just when somebody says, you're like, you know, we'll double check before we publish it. That's fine. Thank you.
The worst thing that can happen is they put money in your account. That is all you can do with it. So go for it. It's fine.
Fabulous. Thank you.
Thanks, Angela. Very quickly then, David, would you like to, I presume, Phil, your hand's still up before, is that correct? Yeah, okay.
Just a quick one to what Danny's just said, whether Danny wants to answer it himself, it doesn't matter who answers it. He just said we're not allowed a bank account card. Now, we've been told that we are allowed one, and we are in the processes of asking our bank for one.
No. No, it says it's quite categorically you can't have a credit card or a debit card.
Right,
so
well,
on the church, because if you think about it, the person takes a card and can withdraw money or move accounts. You can't just, you're not allowed, David, is what I'm trying to say. Yeah.
Right, okay, it's just that we've been told by our supervisors officers that we could.
Well, can I say I fully support what Danny has said, and it's not the ability of the bank not to be able to provide that to you. It's this little book called Rules for Churches that says every transaction on your account has got to be authorized and counter authorized by 2 people, and you cannot operate that with a card. So I'm sorry, if you've ordered a card, cut it up. You should not be using one.
Right, okay, thank you.
Okay. So I think we're there, ladies and gentlemen. I really hope timing is perfect, because we said we'd be about 2 hours, and that's what we've been. Remember, please, just can I begin by thanking Danny and thanking Leslie for their...
Sorry, Minister Bruton, I've been trying to put my hand up to ask a question. Can I just ask a very, very quick one? Is that okay?
Okay, Claire, go on. Off you go.
I'm really, really sorry. Okay. Okay, the first part of the question was to get clarification for Danny, and David's already done that. I sit on the same committee as David Prescott, who asked a question about cards, because I was concerned that that was something we were going to be going down the route of, and obviously we can't be doing that. The other point I want to make then, so if we want to buy goods, such as we want to get into a contract for internet, etc., and they're saying we need a debit card to be able to set that up, how do we go about that when we can't have a debit card attached to the church obviously we'd be breaking the law if we used our own debit cards to do that as committee members and officers of the church.
Why do you need a card to set up the internet?
I think
They could go from your
I
bank
think it
account.
was, we wanted to put it, when we've gone into some shops like OT, etc., to do it, in order to set up a direct debit, they've said that we need a card to do that. Just want to make sure that we're not doing anything wrong.
Well, sorry, that is not the case. You can set a direct debit up on a charity account. Your bank will help and support you with that. And I think if a supplier or merchant is requiring that, you should go back to them. You should explain that your constitution does not allow you to have a credit card and debit card. And if they want to do business with you, they've got to provide another route to do so. And direct debits from the account are not a problem.
Thank you very much for that.
All right. And David Middleton, I'm very quickly going to come to you before we call off. I'm sorry you're muted, David. If you'd like to unmute.
Yeah, that's better. I think I'm back in the room. Just to say, we don't have such a luxury as online banking, and they even took away our telephone banking facilities a year ago with Lloyds Bank in our account. And I've no idea if we can do anything about that other than changing banks.
Well, I think that's the answer. If the bank are not giving you the service you want, go to another bank. And a church that I'm a support officer for have just moved to a bank called Metro Bank, which is one of the new banks, because basically NatWest were not giving them the service that they required.
Oh, right.
Metro Bank are open, their banking hours are a lot longer than the traditional high street banks, and they actually provide a better rate of interest than some of the high street banks, and they're a little bit more customer focused than some of the high street banks.
That's very useful, thank you.
For most of the high street banks, church accounts and charity accounts, they don't make any money on them. And we are seen, I think, in some cases as an encumbrance rather than actually the kind of customers that they're looking to encourage. So there's plenty of other provision out in the market. As long as you ensure that whichever financial institution you do business with is covered by the government scheme. Leslie, I'm sure you can remind me, the Financial and Conduct Association, is it, or something like that?
Financial Conduct Authority, the FCA. You look at any banking, literally on the bottom, it's like a little italic-y thing, the symbol of the FCA. As long as you're going to a reputable bank. But to be quite honest, banks that are providing online services that you're looking for, the less reputable, the smaller ones don't provide it anyway, so you wouldn't get the functionality you were looking for. Well, anecdotally, we've had quite a few churches that I think having problems with Lloyds and Lloyds TSB because they merged and then they demerged, and that has resulted in a few churches being asked to shut accounts, or they can't have this anymore, or they can't have that anymore, which sounds like the problem you've had, David. You might be as well just cutting your losses and going to somewhere that appreciates your custom.
So, certainly, and of course, all those sort of transactions include having to visit a branch and getting all your signatories and things together, which will take a long time.
I know it's not easy.
But unfortunately, it's not ideal. But I think you're quite right. They don't want us, so we'll try and find someone that does. Thanks for the tip.
And the joy of the FCA coverage, that means up to a balance of £87,000, which I think covers most SNU churches, is secured should the bank hit financial problems. Your money is safe. So that's worth ensuring. And obviously don't go to some little backstreet bank that you've never heard of. Oh,
no.
You've got to remember what I said. It's not our money. It's charity funds, and we have to be responsible.
Fantastic, thank you.
On that note, ladies and gentlemen, I hope this morning has been beneficial to you. Thank you for your participation. All of Leslie's slides are available as downloads from the SNU website now, as is the Treasurer's Manual. The recording of this meeting will be available in a couple of days, again from the SNU website as a download. And please, a lot of you have given us your feedback in the chat box, but if you'd like to give us feedback by email also, we can look to provide these sessions again if you feel they're useful and helpful to you. So again, thank you to everybody for being here. Thank you very much to Danny and to Leslie for your input into the meeting, and let's do a Strictly Come Dancing. Keep counting. Thank you very much.
Well, goodbye.
Bye-bye.